So to begin, I just want to thank everybody for your prayers for my grandmother. She unfortunately passed away. So, but she did so in Shabbat. She did so in peace. So Bezat Hashem, this class and the class is moving forward. Should be an aliyah of her neshama. That's for Sarah Esther Bat Zelig. And, Bezat Hashem, we should see all of our family and friends soon together with happiness and joy and health, and only experience simchas together, only joy. V'hinei, now we need to know that when a person, he sighs and he draws down ruach chaim into his lacking, because this is what we said before, that when a person has a lacking, his lacking is only coming from a lack of ruach. It's coming from a lack of energy, life force. In the Eitz Chaim, which is the famous monumental work of Rav Chaim Vital, the main student of the Arizal HaKadosh, who was one of the main influences of Rabbi Nachman. So he explains there that corresponding to ruach is the nekudot. There's a very famous teaching, comes from Sefer Yetzirah, but it's really expounded on and explained deeply in the Kitvei Ari, that is the writings of the Arizal. There are 4 dimensions of the Torah. Besides the one that everybody knows, or for most people know, that there's 4 levels of exposition, meaning 4 levels of learning the Torah. That is the Pshat, the Remez, the Drush, and the Sod, which makes up Pardes, which means an orchard or field. So there's also 4 levels of reading and laning the Torah. The lowest level is the letter itself, the otiot. Then you have the nekudot, that is the vowel points. And then there is the, sorry, one second. Let me go back for a second. I just woke up. I'm a little, it's early here. So it's called Tanta. So you have the highest level is Tamim. These are the notes, okay? And then you have Nekudot, that's the vowel points. And then you have the Tagin, that's the crowns of the letters. And then you have the letters themselves. So we're going to see that this actually connects to the lesson that we're going to say today. But the level of the Ruach is the level of the vowel point. The vowel point is what creates the movement of the letters. So too within a person, it's the vowel points, it's the energy, it's the life force that creates his own energy, his own life force, his own wholeness. Shemit aneach alav umashlim. And when a person sighs or he exhales, he's actually drawing into himself this ruach chaim, which is making him whole. So too, we can see that there's a parallel to this with the Dam Rishon, the first man. He wasn't whole until Hashem breathed into him. So we see here that he's not living, so to speak. He's not truly having life force until Hashem is breathing Ruach Chaim into him. However, he says that it's not allowed, or that you shouldn't, it would be a very bad idea for a person who's not holding on a very high level of spirituality, of wholeness, to approach and to provoke those people who are disconnected from Hashem. Because when a person provokes or he tries to even assist the person that he's not close to Hashem, and that person sighs, he's not getting his life force from the Tzaddik of the generation, like you might be. He's getting his life force from the Rav of the Klipa, Esav. He's getting his life force from the other side. And we know that this Ruach is very great in its time. And if a person is not a complete Tzaddik, which the majority of us are not, so then what happens is that the life force of the Rasha is greater than yours, because the Ruach of the Rasha is great in its time. It's like the storm wind. And therefore, Kol Tzorav Yafiach Behem. The pasuk that it says in Tehillim, he blows away all of his enemies, meaning the Yuchala Ziklo, that this person is capable of harming you, Chas v'Shalom. So we know that it's encouraged amongst the Jewish people that we should go out to everybody and to try and help them. However, when people start to come into these classes, I encourage them in the beginning to just worry about, so to speak, internalizing the teachings themselves. What's the reason for that? One of them is this teaching itself. That is, and it goes obviously against Kiruv, the adventure to try to bring people back to Hashem, because when a person himself is not whole, he's very vulnerable. And he's specifically vulnerable to the negative influences of the voices of those who are around him. And what happens is that many times a person gets so excited by what he's learning, he wants to give it out to the world. But ultimately, he doesn't realize that when he tries to give it to those people around him, he starts to internalize their ruach. He starts to draw in their ruach. And he doesn't have the tools, he doesn't have the strengths, he doesn't have the safeguards to be able to do so in a way which is safe for him and safe for everyone around him. And he ends up getting negatively affected. And you can easily test this out, that you see that when you speak to others about Hashem, and let's say, for instance, they don't agree or they don't want to come close spiritually, how are you affected by that? Do you feel yourself become depleted as a result? Do you feel your faith takes a hit? Do you feel that your spirituality loses its strength? So if that's happening, it's because you're not yet a complete tzaddik. And if you're not yet a complete tzaddik, then the ruach of the person who you're speaking to, it's greater than yours, because he's drawing from the rav of the klipa, which is the ruach sarah, that is the ruach of the storm wind, which is great in its time. And therefore, it's not for everybody. They're not able to provoke those people who are far from Hashem. Only a complete tzaddik. With tzaddik amorhu, and this complete tzaddik, because he's like the pasuk that it says, Lo ye'uneh l'tzaddik kol aven. This tzaddik, nothing bad is going to happen to him. Why? Because we know that we said in the past that the Gemara brings down that there is no suffering, there is no negative occurrences that take place without averot, without a certain act, which is a transgression or a breach of the Torah. And who is the only people that they do not breach the Torah on any level, not in the level of thought, not in the level of speech, not in the level of action? Those are only complete tzaddikim. And according to the teachings of Chassidus, to be a complete tzaddik is such a great level that very few people ever accomplish it. So as a result of that, it's only those people who are able to go down into the darkness and to help those people. Like we know that Rabbi Nachman, that he would spend time with secular Jews, playing chess with them. He would spend time having drinks with them and speak with them. And as a result of that, not only was Rabbi Nachman not affected, but those people testified that if Rabbi Nachman lived longer, he would have brought them to complete teshuvah. However, we, not being at that level, when we try and do the same thing, many times we find ourselves becoming depleted. A good example of this would be like, let's say, a therapist. We know often that those people who become therapists, they themselves suffer with mental health issues, substance abuse issues, their own difficulties in life. That's the source of them being compelled to want to help others because of their own struggles. So on the one hand, this makes them very empathic, which is a great thing. But on the other hand, if they've not yet reached wholeness, then what happens is when they give therapy, they often become very depleted. And then as a result of the depletion, they get burnt out and they lose their capacity to help. And this happens all the time. So the reason is because they're not complete tzaddikim. So it's only for the complete tzaddik to go down into the place of darkness and to lift it up. Dainu, meaning shekava garesh uvitel kol hara shala. In other words, that he's already nullified all the negativity that's within him. So that he's certain that in no way or no form at all he's going to get trapped in any breach of the Torah, in any avera. It's brought down in the teachings of the Tanya, that is the magnum opus of Chabad Hasidus, Rav Shmuel Zalman of Liadi. So he says there, and he explains that the difference between a complete tzaddik and us is that the complete tzaddik not only has overcome all of the negativity in his life, he doesn't act on it, but he's actually transformed the darkness within himself to light, to the extent that there is no darkness anymore. Now, this act itself is very, very deep, and it's very difficult to accomplish. So he says there that even a person that he has completely nullified all of his negativity, that does not make you a complete tzaddik. That you actually have to transform that negativity itself into light, into good. And as a result of that, then you can become a complete tzaddik. Okay? So therefore, there's very few of those people. And you cannot ever assure yourself then that you're not going to come into a situation, that you're going to make a mistake, that you're going to come into an error. You need to continuously safeguard and protect yourself, and to make sure that you're doing the right things to put yourself in a position to succeed always. And this is where attachment to the tzaddik becomes so important, because by attaching myself to the person who is the complete tzaddik, the tzaddik amor, then as a result of that, I draw his ruach and I'm protected from the Rishaim. Because one might ask themselves, how do Hasidim all the time, how do students of these Tzaddikim, they're always going out and trying to help Jewish people? How are they successful in that? And the answer is because they're Chassid, because they're attached to this complete Tzaddik. Then as a result of that, then they get his Ruach. We know that according to the Gemara, that a messenger, a shliach, is the agent of a person. He has the same level of responsibility, and it's as if that the person himself did the act whenever there's a shliach. So it's like the shliach is the messenger. Okay, the messenger is the person who gave him the message. That is the chassid, or the student of the tzaddik. He is so connected to the tzaddik that he actually draws down that same ruach. Now we know that on Pesach, the tzaddik sits down next to the rasha. So we see even from the Pesach table that because that's a reflective of the state of Geula, the unity of the Jewish people when we're all together. But how is it that the rasha, the person who's so far from Hashem, he achieves his tikkun? He does it by sitting next to the tzaddik. But how does the tzaddik be able to achieve the tikkun of the rasha? The tzaddik does so because he's sitting next to the leader of the table, meaning Hashem. So as a result of that, because he's sitting over the waters, the Ruach of Elokim is hovering over the waters. So as a result of that, so he's able to achieve tikkun for the rasha. And us, by way of being the chassid, meaning that we're connected to that tzaddik, we're able to sit next to the rasha as well. Inyan, and the inyan is like this. Ki yesh arba'a yesodot. So it's brought down in the teachings of Chazal, specifically in medieval times. There's a lot of teachings about this, and also in Tikkuni Zohar, that there's 4 foundational elements in the world. That is Eish, Ruach, Mayim, and Afar. Fire, wind, water, and ashes or dust, or earth, we should say. Umala meshor sham heim arba otiot havaya. So this is a very deep Kabbalistic teaching. That is to say that these 4 fundamental, foundational elements of existence, that according to Chazal, according to Kabbalah, everything is made up of these 4 elements of earth, water, wind, and fire. That's spiritually and physically. But if you go higher up in the spiritual worlds, there's no such thing as physicality. So what are these 4 elements? It's actually the 4 letters of Hashem's name that they're derived from, which gives a lot of insight into certain character traits or certain abilities or actually disabilities that we struggle with on an individual level. And I'm going to explain what I mean by that. So how do these 4 foundational elements correspond to the 4 letters of Hashem's name? So we have the last letter of Hashem's name, that's the Hey of Hashem's name. That Hey is corresponding to the element of earth. This is the most physical element, right? Because earth has no life force. Earth doesn't move. Earth is very heavy. And this concept of earth, or the Hey of Hashem's name, this has to do with a person struggles with lethargy, lack of energy, with sadness, with depression. Those are all coming from the Hey of Hashem's name. So if a person struggles with these areas of depression or lethargy, lack of energy, lack of motivation, lack of life force, so all of that is coming from the final Hey of Hashem's name. So that means that his tikkun comes from the opposite of that. His rectification comes with the opposite of that. And Rabbi Nachman has a very important teaching that whatever a person struggles with, that is actually a hint to his capability or his koach, his power in that area, to the opposite. That means that if he struggles with lack of energy, he actually has the capability and potential to have the greatest amount of energy. If he struggles with depression, he's actually able to achieve the highest level of simcha, of joy. But that's in potential. For him to be able to achieve it, we're going to see that he needs to expel his negativity and to draw down the good. Okay, so the final letter of Hashem's name, we know Hashem's name is a Yud and a Hey, and a Vav and a Hey. This equals 26. The final letter of Hashem's name is the Hey. This is corresponding to the physical element of earth. If you go up in that, then you have the Vav. The Vav is the elongated letter of Hashem's name. This is the channel. The Vav looks like a channel between two different realities, and that's what the Vav is. And this is corresponding to Mayim, to water. Just like water goes from above to below, so does the Vav go from above to below. It's taught in the Tanya that the Vav, or the water, is the source of all physical pleasure, all taiva. All desire for physical pleasure comes from the Vav of Hashem's name. So that's the concept of water. Just like water is hinting to an intense level of pleasure, because the waters are intense in the ocean, that the mayim rises and it falls, and it does so with great intensity and fervor. So too, a person's physical desires, the more connected he is to physical desires, and the more he struggles with this area, the more he's connected to this Vav, the Vav in Hashem's name. Then you have the higher Hey in Hashem's name. This is corresponding to air. That is a person's speech. The negativity or the difficulty with speech is called Devarim B'Telim. So you can see that as these letters get higher in Hashem's name, so too the challenges that a person faces with these letters, or deficiencies in these letters, they become more subtle. Because we started with earth, which is very heavy, which you could feel, which you know that you struggle with it. And then you have pleasure, desire for pleasure, which is doesn't feel as intense of a struggle as, let's say, depression or sadness. But it's still hard. But then you go up, and now we're at the Hey of Hashem's name, the higher Hey of Hashem's name. This is Devarim B'Telim. This is using speech in a way which is not conducive for positivity. I'm not using my speech in order to uplift myself and others around me. I'm not using my speech for spirituality. I'm using my speech for mundane things. I'm using my speech in a negative way. I'm hurting others. I'm disparaging others and myself through my speech. I'm speaking in ways of flattery, or I'm speaking in ways of lying. So all of these are called Devarim B'Telim. This is all a pagam. It is a blemish in that higher Hey of Hashem's name. And that's the level of wind. And then you have the highest level of Hashem's name. That's the highest letter of Hashem's name. That's the Yud. That's the apex of Hashem's name. This Yud is corresponding to all the traits that are uniquely human. This is the concept of Aish, of fire. Those traits that are uniquely human, that are deriving from this quality of fire, they are anger, that is jealousy, that is ego. All of these things are corresponding to the Aish, that is the Yud of Hashem's name. But in our world, in our physical world, they reflect itself in the elements of earth, water, air, and fire. And obviously you could see that as these elements go up, they become much more subtle, they become much more refined, they become much lighter. Just like fire is the lightest of all of these entities, but it's also the most intense. So too, you see in your soul, because all of these qualities are corresponding to your neshama, because we are Tzelem Elokim. We were created in the image of Hashem. What does that mean? We were created in the image of Hashem. It means we were mamash created with Yud Kei Vav Kei, that our neshama is a revelation of a certain combination or revelation of Hashem's name, Yud and a Hey and a Vav and a Hey. And that's the reason why each of us have different strengths in these letters, or we have different vulnerabilities or struggles or difficulties in these areas. Now, a person might think to himself, I struggle with all of these things. That's totally normal. That's totally fine. And therefore, it becomes incumbent upon you to attach yourself to the tzaddik of the generation, to the tzaddik gamur, to the complete tzaddik, because he himself has nullified all of his negativity in these areas. And according to the Baal Tanya, he's actually transformed those struggles to light. He turned his sadness and he turned it into joy. Rabbi Nachman says that the greatest joy in the world is not just the person who's naturally happy, but the greatest joy in the world is found in the person that he turned his own sadness into joy. But this is the greatest level of joy. So now Rabbi Nachman says, Umatahem me'oravim tovara. However, that the difference between these elements in this physical world versus these elements in Hashem's name is that in Hashem's name, they're perfect, they're whole. These root letters and these root elements, we know that at the level of Hashem, there is no lacking. However, once Hashem's name, so to speak, devolves into this physical world and it reveals itself in these physical elements, now everything in this world is a mixture of Tov and Ra. It's a mixture of good and bad, meaning that it's a mixture of revelation of Hashem and concealment of Hashem, just like these elements are. And the whole essence of the tzaddik gamur, of the complete tzaddik, is that he has separated, he has removed himself and distinguished himself, all of the bad from the good completely. Ad shalo, until that there is not nishar lo shumra, there's not remaining in him any bad at all. There's no more concealment of godliness within him. Me'achad me'arba yisodot, from amongst these four elements. Shehem klal amidot kiyadua, which we know encompasses all of the traits. Ushehu b'china zo muta litgarot b'rashayim. And when a person reaches this level, where he's attached to a person of this level, then he's able to go work with and to deal with and to try and help or to try and nullify the negativity of others. But inyan, and the concept is like this: Ki kol rasha, every person that he is far from Hashem, ahachrech shiu lo tzino shikabel derech sham aruch shalo lashlim achisaron. He has to have a conduit. He has to have a channel or a pipe through which he receives life force or energy in order to complete his lackings. And he has many of them, and his lackings are very deep. What's this tzinor? This channel, this tzinor, hu derech amida ra'ah, it is his negative quality or his negative attribute, me'arba'ah yisodot shemshich v'kibir, that he draws in himself and he's empowered through this bad character trait. So this is very deep, meaning to say that how does a person draw down the ruach of the other side? He does it through these negative character traits. So let's say a person, he deals with sadness, but he doesn't fight it. He doesn't work to elevate his sadness. So then his sadness itself actually becomes the channel through which he draws down negative energy. Or let's say a person deals with anger. So this anger itself is not just an emotional character trait which causes damage to his own personal life, which he sees within his relationships, but the anger itself is a channel for receiving negative energy from the other side. So the more that a person has, or the less that a person has rectified these character traits that come from the four letters of Hashem's name, right, which we say actualizes itself within a person as his propensity for sadness or lethargy, his propensity for taiva, for desire, for physicality that goes beyond what he needs, that goes into excess. Devarim Batalim, speaking in a way which is damaging or hurtful or false or not true or flattering. And then and the last one, which is anger or jealousy or ego. So all of these things are actually channels for negative energy. The more that a person is lacking in these four areas, the more he becomes a tzin or a channel for the ruach of the other side. That's why when you hang out with a person that he has, you say he has negative energy. Mama, she has negative energy. It's not just that he's lacking in these things or she's lacking in these things. It's that she or he is actually a channel for tremendous negative energy, that anybody who connects to him ends up going down with him. We see in this week's Parsha, there was a person named Korach. Korach himself was very fallen. He was very disempowered in these different elements. His ego was very, very high. He had tremendous amounts of jealousy and anger. And arrogance, and as a result of that, he went down in the worst possible way. And not only that, but everybody who was attached to him went down as well. And when a tzaddik desires to throw down this person, meaning to elevate the lackings of the rasha, of the person who's far from Hashem, he's forced to descend into the negative quality trait of that person itself, with which that person empowers himself. And he subdues and he nullifies the channel of the rasha, of the person who's far from Hashem, with which this person receives his ruach. Meaning, just as a practical example, the tzaddik would go connect to the person that he's tremendously arrogant, and he would specifically, bedavka, go into the element of his ego, and he would nullify and he would cause him to be humbled. And as a result of that, he would break and he would destroy the channel within that person, and he would stop drawing down negative energy. So too, this isn't just amongst people that, let's say, they're not good people or they're purposely trying to disconnect themselves from Hashem. Even us, the whole reason why Rabbi Nachman is such a benefit to all of us and why we've had such a elevation of our personal lives from his teachings and his Torah, his advice, is because in truth, we all have lackings in these four areas, in these four yesodot, these four foundational elements of our neshama, of our soul. And because of that, when we attach ourselves to Rabbi Nachman or to a complete tzaddik, then what happens is he cuts off that channel, right? He turns our sadness into joy. He gives us the power and the koach to overcome our desires for the physical world. He elevates our speech and he removes our ego. And as a result of all those things, why he's causing us to have an elevation and joy and simcha and closeness to Hashem is because he's nullifying all of those elements which are disconnecting us, and then drawing down Ruach Chaim, not from the good side, but from the klipa, from the Sitra Achra. This tzaddik needs to be a tzaddik more. Therefore, this person, he needs to be a complete tzaddik. She'ein bo shum ra. He doesn't have any negativity in him remaining. Lema'an lo yeh koach la'ruach sara. So that this storm wind, shehu ha'ruach chaim shel rasha, this is the life force of the person that is far from Hashem, lishlot lahazik. It cannot chas v'shalom damage to the tzaddik in the moment or in the time that the tzaddik descends into that negative quality trait. Because this this ra, the negativity of the rasha, it's unable to grab any part of the tzaddik. It's unable to take a hold in the tzaddik because he has no space, he has no place for negativity to manifest itself, because he has sealed up all the channels within himself. And then he has no ability to be able to connect and to attach to him and to have a negative influence on him. And also this midara, this negative character trait, ba'atzma itself, sheyored lachnia, ein lo shum tafisa, chas v'shalom. Rak ma sheyored l'tocha hu lachnia, lashpila. That this quality itself, which the tzaddik descends down into in order to bring about its nullification so that it has no hold on him, his entry there is only for the purpose of casting it down and subduing it. Like it says about Avram Avinu, the first tzaddik, the first complete tzaddik, V'ya'al Avram Mitzrayim, that Abraham went down in Mitzrayim, but what was the point of him going down into Mitzrayim? Meaning to subdue all of the negative character traits within humanity. That's the concept of Mitzrayim. Mitzrayim is a spiritual manifestation. It's a level of consciousness. It is a sleeping of the spiritual state. And that sleeping of the spiritual state is manifested in the lackings in these four areas. So why does Abraham go down into Mitzrayim? Only v'ya'al Avram Mitzrayim. Only that Abraham should ascend from Mitzrayim. Why does Hashem send our neshemot, our souls, down into this physical world? Only so that we should ascend from this physical world and bring up all of the good from this place. And this is why the pasuk in Tehillim, which we actually say this pasuk every day in the morning, mashpil v'shayim adei aretz, that he casts down those people who are far from Hashem to the ground. That's what it literally means. Rabbi Nachman says, Roshei Tevot, this is the first letters. It spells Eish, Ruach, Mayim, and Afar. So there's amazing teaching. That this pasuk, which says that the tzaddik, he cast down the rasha, he cast down the person who's far from Hashem, down to the ground. This actually is made up of the four letters, the four foundational elements, which we learned about before. That is Eish, Ruach, Mayim, and Afar. Fire, air, water, and earth. Shehem kol arba'ot yesodot. These are the four elements of existence. Shehem klal kol hamidot. They make up all of the midot of the human being, all of the attributes of the human being. Shetzarichin levaram beveru gamur. And a person, his whole task in his life is to totally elevate and to extract all of the good from the bad in these areas. Until there is no ra left at all, b'shum midah, in any of these midot, me'arba'a yesodot, in these four yesodot, v'azayhu tzaddik gamur. And then a person has truly achieved the level of tzaddik gamur, complete tzaddik, va'az daika. And then specifically, when he has separated himself from these four yesudot, these four foundational elements of negativity, Eish, Ruach, Mayim, and Afar, Azaihu, then he specifically mashpil v'shayim adei aretz, then he literally is going to throw down all of the negativity to the ground, and he's going to leave only the good, and he's going to elevate that person from that place. Masha ein kain. This is not the case for the tzaddik she'eno gamor, for even a tzaddik, a spiritual master, that he's not completely elevated himself from all of these negative qualities. Av she'en lo shum avera. Even if he has not even done an avera, like the Tanya says, he hasn't done any breach of the Torah. He's not engaging in any act which is disconnecting himself from Hashem. But he still has not completely separated himself from negativity. He's just not acting on it. He can still do it in potential. But al ken asur, he says, then it's asur. It's completely not allowed, lo itgarot b'rashayim, for him to engage with and to provoke those people who are far from Hashem. Because then there's a place that the negativity is going to attach themselves to him. Then it's going to damage him, chas v'shalom. And this extension of the life force of the Rasha, the person who's far from Hashem, that it's extreme in its time, in the concept of the Ruach Sarah and the concept of the storm wind, it will overpower him. And this is what it says in Masechet Brachot, Vakativ, that it's written, Al titchar b'meriyim. There's a whole debate back and forth between the sages of Chazal, whether or not that a person is able to provoke those people who are far from Hashem, to engage in conflict with them. And the reason for the dispute is what we're learning right now. Because in truth, the only way to do this is to be a tzaddik amor. And that's what the Gemara comes out saying. So this is what we say here. Mi shalibo nofko omorken. That it says there that it's said by a person whose heart worries. What does Rashi say that means? Hayare me'aver chibiyado. He specifically has fears. He has concerns. He has a lower level of fear. Where is it coming from, this anxiety? It's coming from the averot. It's coming from his breaches of the Torah, shebiyado, that it's in his hand, daika specifically, meaning, shehu shamarnu, this person that we're speaking about, ki be'emet ein lo shum avera. It's in his hand, meaning he hasn't done the avera. He's not having a breach in the Torah. Rak shehu yarei adayin me'averot biyado v'chochol lasot. But it's still in his potential to do, even though he's not acting on it. Ki ara adayin b'koach, because this negativity is still within him in potential. Ki lo zacha, because he's not merited adayin still. Livchina lo ye'uneh. Let Tzaddik kol aven. He is not yet merited to the level of no avera is going to fall on him. The eno batuach adayin. He can't be assured of himself. Shelo yaro lo bichshol avera, that no avera is going to fall on him. Chas v'shalom. Balken asur lo ligarot b'rashayim, and therefore it's a sword for him to provoke those people who are far from him. V'zehu techarish kevala rasha tzaddik mimenu. And this is like the pasuk that it says in Habakkuk. Why do you, speaking about Hashem, why do you hold your peace as the Rasha devours the tzaddik that's greater than him? And Chazal teach the Amru Rabbeinu Zechronam Levracha. It's taught in Bava Batra Amud, Daf Alad Amud Aleph Tzaddik Mimenu Boleya. That the wicked man literally boleya, he devours, he swallows the tzaddik that's greater than him. He says, Rabbi Nachman, boleya daika, he swallows him specifically. Kihu boleya oto mamash, barichut aruach shalo, because the concept of swallowing is extending your breath in order to assimilate that which is outside of you, inside of you. Shehu gadol bishato, that he's swallowing him with his ruach chayim, which is coming from the klipa, which is very intense in its time. Aval tzaddik amor eino boleya, but the tzaddik amor, the complete tzaddik, he can't be swallowed. Ki ein libo novko mechashash michsho avera, because there is no place that the negativity can attach itself to him. We know that Rabbi Nachman teaches that it's a very great tikkun to get up early in the morning and to mourn over the loss of the Beit HaMikdash. We know that we're going to have a fast this month, the 17th of Tammuz, which is, we're fasting over the beginning of the breach of Yerushalayim. Yerushalayim is a code word for our neshama, for our soul. So the beginning of the breach of our soul, that negativity enters into our soul, it took place in this month. This is connected to the fact that this month is connected to sight. And we know that according to Chazal, all negativity begins within a person. It starts with his sight. Just like, for instance, on a practical level, when a person sees something negative, he desires it. Once he desires it, he wants to go after it. So too, if a person rectifies his level of sight, then he also rectifies everything that's below it. Now, we know next month is going to be the month of Av. This is when we mourn completely over the loss of the Beit HaMikdash, which is the complete manifestation or concealment of the manifestation of godliness in our life. That is manifested, or that is symbolized by the destruction of the Beit HaMikdash. Now, Rabbi Nachman teaches that we should get up every morning and mourn over the loss of the Beit HaMikdash and see ourselves in this mourning, meaning we're mourning really over ourselves. Now, when we mourn over this, Rabbi Nachman teaches that we're drawing our koach from the true tzaddikim, because the true tzaddikim themselves, when they pray this prayer, it's called the din tefillah, that this tikkun chatzot, this midnight prayer, is a judgment prayer. And what happens is that when the tzaddik prays this prayer with intensity and with fervor, then it causes that the sitra achra, the forces of negativity of the other side, throws up all of those Jewish souls, all of those souls of converts, and releases them from the klipa, releases them from the shell, releases them from the other side, and they're able to find Hashem in their life. So how does the tzaddik release us? He must release us from, so to speak, after we have been swallowed from the other side, because it's bedavka, the ruach chaim of the other side. It's the ruach chaim of the person that is far from Hashem. This is what swallows us. This is what causes us this negative energy. You can literally feel that when you hang out with certain people, your desire for negativity increases. You can feel that your desire for physicality increases just by hanging out with certain people. This reason is because we've been swallowed. Kikavar bitel hara'ah, because until that he has nullified the ra gamre, he has nullified the negativity within him completely. Mikol midot vatavot, from all of his negative character traits and from all of his desires for excess in the four elements. Ba'al ze hatzadik amor v'cho hanilvim alav mutarim. And this is the chiddush now, that even if you are not at the level of the tzaddik amor, which we have said so far, that you're not allowed to provoke those people who are far from Hashem, or even to engage in them because of the negativity which could come upon you. However, if you are nilvim, if you are attached to the tzaddik amor, which you are by learning his teachings, which you are by bringing his teachings into your life, which you are by giving tzedakah to the tzaddik, which you are by getting to the tzaddik himself and to reveal and to let go of whatever's in your heart there. So then as a result of all these levels of attachment, then it's mutar for you, litgarut bershaim. You're allowed to go into the place of negativity. Because then the tzaddik works through you to descend down into all of these channels of the midot, of the negative character traits of these people, shikibiru al atzmam, with which they empower themselves, ushabram, and to destroy uvatlam, and to nullify these channels. And through this, the tzaddik and those who are attached to him are capable of going down into these negative places and destroying the channels through which they draw life force and energy. So too, there's a concept in Chassidut of uplifting that which is fallen, specifically, let's say, with music. We know that traditionally, the Torah does not encourage a person to listen to music which is obscene or which is mundane. Because Rabbi Nachman teaches in the Kutmaran that it's almost impossible for that person to be close to Hashem and to serve Hashem because of the koach and the power spiritually that enters into that music. However, when a person reaches the level of a tzaddik amor, of a complete tzaddik, then you see that Hasidic masters over the course of the past couple of hundred years, they will badafka specifically take music from people who are secular or from people who are far from Hashem. They will take the tune itself and they will uplift that tune and they will turn it into a spiritual niggin. They will turn it into a spiritual song. And the reason they do that is to engage in this concept that in Kabbalah it's brought down. It's called birur, that is upliftment or elevation of the sparks which have fallen, because it's not just that a song was created and it's secular or it's mundane. It's that in fact that song comes from the Beit HaMikdash. It comes from a very high spiritual lofty place, but it's fallen into the hands of negativity, into the side of the Sitra Achra. It's up to the tzaddikim and those who are attached to them to take that music itself and to lift it up and to elevate it. But when a person has not reached that level, or he's not attached to the person who has reached that level, then he'll see that when he listens to that music, he actually is drawn down by it. He falls from it. So this is what we've learned so far. Bezrat Hashem, next week, after Shabbat, we're going to continue and learn how this relates to halakha, how this relates to Jewish law, and how your ability, so to speak, to elevate the good from the bad is completely dependent on a person learning Shulchan Aruch every day. And this is why Rabbi Nachman brought down in his last testament, his final will, to all of his students. He says it's incumbent upon every Jew that every day you take a time, at least a little bit, to learn Shulchan Aruch, to learn the code of Jewish law. Because the deep secret of the code of Jewish law is what we're going to learn is it separates good from bad. And why is this important? Because this helps us to engage in biur, to extract all of the good from the bad, to lift up all the good from the bad. And by doing this, we nullify the negativity inside of us, and we prevent and we cut off any negative channel that we have to draw down energy or life force from the Sitra Achra. Does anybody have any questions about this lesson that we gave over today? You can ask the question on the bottom through writing. You can ask the question through your voice, but you should definitely ask a question. It's good to ask questions.
So I have a question.
Go ahead.
So I have been studying the Shulchan Aruch daily, but there's so much of it that deals with mitzvot that are only for men.
Right.
So, should women still be reading and learning that, or can we bypass those parts? Or
right,
because they're long sections of very detailed halacha.
Right. That's a great question. I would say the main focus should be those aspects of Jewish law that relate to women. That should be the main focus of your studying. If you happen to like learning it and you want to like really makayim this eitzah, so the main thing is that you're just going through it. It's not what we're learning is it's not necessarily the act of knowing every single thing that there is, although that's a part of it, meaning gaining an expertise in it. But the main function is actually the learning of it itself, is separating the good from the bad. So just your endeavor or your act of learning the Shulchan Aruch every day, this itself is separating the good from the bad. But for sure, I would say, and I would suggest that your main focus of learning in the Shulchan Aruch should be those areas of Jewish law that apply to women.
Okay, great. Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions?
Rabbi Kalmus, this is Sam from Dallas.
How's it going, Sam?
Good, thank you. Going back to the Roshi Tevot of the 4 elements, is there a significance of Rashayim and Ruach
being connected?
Yeah.
I mean, you could make that exposition. You see from here that the whole essential element of the Rasha that's so dangerous for himself and for others is the Ruach itself. So we see that this is a very, very deep thing. And we know, like we learned in the beginning of the lesson, that Rabbi Nachman said to his students, when people ask you, what did you get in Breslov? What did you get by me? What did you get that's so special from Rabbi Nachman, that's so unique? Tell them Ruach. Tell them Ruach. So now we have a much deeper understanding, a much more comprehensive understanding of really what he was hinting to. At least, we can't know what the Tzaddik means completely. It's way above our pay grade. However, we can see just from the lesson itself that it was a very deep statement, because clearly that Ruach that he's referring to is the Ruach Chaim. That's the Ruach of Elokim that's hovering over the water. It's a Ruach, it's an energy, it's a life force of positivity, of godliness. And that life force itself is the key to overcoming all negativity within yourself, and also being able to help all of those around you, even if they are far. And we see, explicitly that a lot of the transformations that happen in the lives of secular Jewish people that might be drawing down their Ruach from the Sitra Achra, so it's come from the teachings of Breslov, it's come from the Breslover Hasidim. And it's specifically because they are drawing down the Ruach of the Tzaddik, of Rabbi Nachman. So for sure, you could say it's connected.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure. There's a question over here. Can you go over the 4 elements again? Sure. So you have, it's even deeper in the Zohar. It says that, okay, and there's a second element to this question. And what do you mean? What do you do when one is imbalanced? One area needs improvement. Okay. So we'll get to that in a second. The Rabbi Nachman says like this, and it's brought down in the Zohar and Tikkuni Zohar, that every element of your being has the 4 letters of Hashem's name in it, and everything in existence is made up. It's almost like a what is the word? Like a chemical notation, that every single element of existence has its own composite or makeup of Hashem's letters of his name. Those 4 letters are a yud, that's gematria 10, equals to 10, a hey, that's gematria 5, a vav, this is gematria 6, and a hey, that's gematria 5. This equals 26. Everything in this physical world, including your own neshama, is made up of the letters of Hashem's name. Now, it's taught in the Zohar that these, or specifically Tikkuni Zohar, that these 4 letters are corresponding to these 4 foundational elements. So we have, again, the highest letter of Hashem's name, that's the Yud. This is corresponding to the qualities that are completely and only connected to people. That is anger, jealousy, and ego. These 4 things. My son just woke up. You have to go back to sleep. It's too early. It's 6 o'clock.
Wake up.
You want to wake up? Go ask Ima if you can wake up. So anger, jealousy, ego, all of these things come from the highest of the 4 letters of Hashem's name. Then you have Devarim Batalim, that comes from the Hey of Hashem's name. That is deficient speech, or speech that's used for mundane things, or for lying, or for cheating, or for using speech not for positivity, because we know that speech is the deepest koach of a person, to be able to use his speech for good. So to the opposite as well. Then you have the Vav of Hashem's name. This is corresponding to a person's taivas, his desires for physicality, that go beyond what's necessary or positive. And then lastly, you have the Hey of Hashem's name. This is one's propensity towards earthiness, towards lethargy or sadness. Now the question was, what does it mean if I'm unbalanced in these areas, and what do I do about it? So what it means is that you're a human being. The whole reason why you were brought to this world is to be able to work on these different areas within yourself. So that's fine. You should feel good about the fact that you're lacking in them. There's nothing wrong with that. The way that you rectify them is by drawing the ruach of Elohim that's hovering over the water, by drawing the ruach of life that comes from the tzaddik. And by doing that, you're able to nullify these things. So what does that mean practically? So we learned in the 4th Torah of Likutei Moharan that the way to draw down the ruach of the tzaddik in these 4 levels, there's 3 different techniques to draw and to overcome the 2 lowest levels. That's the concept of sadness and lethargy that comes from the Hey of Hashem's name, and taivas, that's desires. Rabbi Nachman says you do it by seeing the face of the tzaddik. So when you see the face of the tzaddik, then automatically what's going to happen is your desire for things which are not good for you, or excessive physically, or your lack of energy is going to dissipate, and you're going to be filled with life force. That all comes from seeing the face of the tzaddik. And Rabbi Nachman teaches that the essence of a tzaddik's face is his Torah teachings. So when you learn the Torah teachings of the tzaddik, you draw down his ruach into those 2 levels, and you rectify those places, and you're able to draw balance into those places to elevate those levels. Then you have Devarim Batalim. How do you overcome negative speech and elevate your speech? Interestingly, Rabbi Nachman says you do that by giving tzedakah to the tzaddik. This rectifies those lackings in speech and elevates your speech. And then finally, and a way to understand that is because speech is like seed. Speech is like zera. When you speak, it's literally seed bearing. It creates reality. So when you speak in a negative way, it creates a negative reality. When you give tzedakah, what's the concept of tzedakah? Tzedakah is properly used seed, because seed is the concept of money as well. So when I give tzedakah to the tzaddik, or when I give tzedakah to people who are trying to reveal the teachings of the tzaddik. So as a result of that, then I rectify the higher hey of Hashem's name. And then lastly, there is the final yud, the highest level of Hashem's name, and this is corresponding to anger and to jealousy. These are all rooted in ego. And Rabbi Nachman says the way that you get rid of your ego is that you make the effort to travel to the tzaddik, that you make the effort to travel to him through whatever obstacles and difficulties that takes place in order to achieve that. And when you get to him, that you unload everything that's in your heart to the tzaddik. And as a result of this, you're able to nullify the highest level. And obviously what ends up happening from this is it makes one very humble, because that person, he had to go through so much effort in order to visit the tzaddik. He's revealing these parts about himself, which are very humanizing, and they are very humbling, that you are explaining all these things that you've done and that you've been through in your life. And by the way, this is a good time to just mention again, we have our fundraiser. It may not be at the end of the month now, because I think we set it up on a date that's not conducive for the best fundraiser. So I think we might move it back a couple of weeks, but it's really, really, really important that everybody who watches these classes plays their part and helps us to be able to have a successful fundraiser. All you have to do is send an email to Zion Breslov Project at gmail.com and try to find a way to help us. We're going to have phone stations in different places in the country, in America. All you have to do is make a few phone calls, and just tell people how much the project has meant to you, that you believe in it, that you feel like it can help many more people. And by doing this, you achieve the level of tzedakah to the tzaddik, because you are helping an organization which's sole effort is trying to get these teachings out to others. So please reach out to Zion Breslov Project at gmail.com. Send a quick email. All you have to say is, I want to help. How can I help? That's it. I want to help with the fundraiser. How can I help? And the COO will send out an email to you about how you can help us. And this will be a great benefit to you and your family, because it's the highest level of tzedakah. And it will obviously help us to continue these classes, because without funding, there's no way for us to continue the classes. And that's just at the lowest level. And that would be chaval, that there should be no more classes. We've had so much success and we've helped so many people in such a short amount of time. We can do so much more. And then on the higher end of it, if we have resources and finances, there's so many things that we want to do to be able to use those finances for the best. Just as a practical example, we have Rosh Hashanah coming up. Uman, one of my dreams for Tzion is that we have a yearly trip for Rosh Hashanah to be able to send our students there. And not just that, but that we're able to subsidize those trips. There's many people that they're not able to afford that trip, or at least not fully. I really want to create some type of gemach, or some type of subsidy for those people that they struggle to be able to get there, and to be able to actually pay for a portion of the majority of the trips of those people who want to go to Uman for Rosh Hashanah with us. This is just one of many ideas that we have, but obviously to be able to do something like this at this level is dependent on us having a lot of success with this fundraiser. So please, I beg you from the bottom of my heart, please reach out either to me or to Ben Weinberg. Reach out and email us at gmail.com, Zion Breslov Project at gmail.com, and find a way to help. And please don't wait. Do it today. As soon as you hear this, send a quick email. Much appreciated. Everybody have an amazing, amazing Shabbat, a happy Shabbat, a connected Shabbat, that we should learn how to have true attachment to Moshe Rabbeinu and to distance ourselves from Korach, to be able to draw down the Ruach of Chaim, the Ruach of Elokim that hovers over the water, and to distance ourselves from the Ruach of the Sitra Achra, so that we can get very close to Hashem and to fill in all those places within us that are lacking. Everybody have a Shabbat Shalom.